Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. If you didn't check out the video yesterday with Brian Walker, make sure to go check it out. We're checking out Darnay Holmes' film and why he could be the next Chris Harris Jr., that slot corner, that elite slot presence for the Giants. He had one phenomenal game I completely forgot about, to be honest with you, against Dallas in the first contest of the season, their first matchup at least last year. Darnay Holmes looked phenomenal, and it was really, really fun to break it down with his personal trainer. He also trains Jabril Peppers, and he just brought in Xavier McKinney, so he's got the trifecta for the Giants in the secondary. Awesome video. I think you guys are really, really going to like it. But today we're diving into something a little bit different, a 3-round mock draft to solve a couple of positions here and upgrade. I think this is a really interesting scenario for the Giants, and it really is going to take a couple interesting moves and a little bit of just transition with management and some of the players involved. I can't wait to dive into them personally, especially in the second round. There's a really interesting player that I think will have implications for Kevin Zeitler. So I think that's kind of cool, and I'm excited to dive into it, Anthony. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. It was really awesome having Brian Walker on to, break down some Darnay Holmes film. If you have not watched that video, what are you waiting for? Go watch it. It's a great video. Do it now. Okay, then come back to this video, right? So go watch that. It's awesome. Now, talking about this mock draft, this 3-round mock draft, this is a mock draft that I'm really excited to break down because two of these guys are kind of guys that I brought to Alex's attention here, the second and third round picks. I'm a huge fan of this second round pick that we're going to get into. The first round pick I like a lot. I don't know how probable it is. I think there's a good chance. Alex and I have been discussing this over the past couple of days. And then that third round pick, real sleeper, that a lot of people are gonna have to take notice of going into the draft process. So really nice 3-round mock draft. I think you guys are gonna really enjoy it. So let's get into it, Alex.
Absolutely, my friend. So the first guy on the board, we all know the Giants need offensive playmakers. I think that might be the priority this offseason. John Mara said it best, we need to get ourselves some playmakers around Daniel Jones. We need to upgrade this offense, allocate some resources toward those bolsterings. And what better to do that than spending the 11th overall pick on one of the top 3 wide receivers? Lately, I've seen Devonta Smith from Alabama. If you don't know who he is, you might be crazy. But if he drops to 11, and I'm seeing more and more mock drafts actually having him slip to 11, the Giants shouldn't hesitate. It's between him and Kyle Pitts. This is a debate that Anthony and I are going to have in the coming days, whether, they should take Kyle Pitts or Devonta Smith if both are on the board. I think that's really, really interesting, and they both present such different types of, weapons for Daniel Jones in any offense, really.
Can I give you my hot take? I think
Yes.
that Devonta Smith should fall to 11. I don't think that he is a top 10 pick, and that's my hot take. My unpopular opinion, I think that he's a prospect that should go between 10 and 15. I don't think that he should go between 1 and 10. Personally, that's how I feel about him. I think Devonta Smith is a great prospect. If I'm saying that he's worthy of being a top 15 pick, clearly I think highly of him. I just don't think I'm as high on him as a lot of other people are. A lot of people have him mocked 6th overall to Philadelphia, things like that. I personally am not sure I would take him if I had the 6th overall pick. I don't know if that's something that I would really want to do. I feel like, I don't know. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. He broke records at Alabama. He's one of the best college receivers of all time. But personally, when I look at him as a prospect and I look at the other 2 wide receiver prospects, I much prefer them. And I think that I prefer Kyle Pitts as well. But if he falls to 11, home run pick, I'm taking Devonta Smith all day long. And I'm never looking back. That is very exciting to me.
Yeah, look, this is the debate we're going to have. I'm excited for it because it really does implicate 2 different types of players, and they offer such different things. Devonta Smith, the biggest con on him is he's 175 pounds. He's not a big guy. He's not imposing physically off the line of scrimmage. If he's getting jammed by aggressive corners who are good at jamming and really disrupting at the point of attack, he's going to lose some battles, and he's going to lose frequently. That's why they have him projected as a Z receiver, meaning he'll be a few feet off the line of scrimmage, maybe lined up next to Sterling Shepard in a slot and Z formation. I think that would be his ideal fit. Bunched, just duo bunch with Sterling Shepard. That really says a lot to me about what the Giants can do creatively, and especially using pre-snap motion. Please, Jason Garrett, don't screw us in that category again. We want to see more pre-snap motion, get Sterling Shepard and Devonta Smith moving in this scenario. Obviously, this is theoretical, but with Devonta Smith, you have him a couple feet away from the line of scrimmage, allowing him to avoid press coverage and allows him to actually manipulate corners. And he has a very diverse and solid release package. He's one of the most smooth route runners that this draft offers. The problem is, again, he is not a strong guy. If he gets pushed, if he gets bumped, he might reflect that. It might show against more physical corners. But I think he's so slender, he's so smooth, and he has such great body control and such a very large wingspan. He's going to be a fantastic player in the NFL. Whether he's immediately a number one wide receiver, that's kind of the question. I think it's going to take him a year. I think they're going to have to get him some more weight. They're going to have to work on his frame and body. But I think overall he'll be a very solid receiver to start his career. He might not be a wide receiver one, but he has the potential to be a very impactful player. Now that's kind of where the argument is like, do you want Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase? Of course, those two guys I think will be wide receiver ones much quicker, just based on their athleticism and upside. But Devonta Smith is one of the more refined route runners. I think he's very crisp. He has like a lot of, I think, when you're thinking about his strengths, he has very good route running. He's really good at wide receiver screens. He can push the field vertically. He has a very nice wingspan. He can high point the ball. He's an extremely intelligent receiver when he's running routes. That's what I like about him the most, actually, is that aside from his fundamentals, running routes, specifically, his ability to weave and weave his way into open spaces and create separation is very, very impressive. He's very smooth. He's a very finesse-based receiver. He's not going to outmuscle you, but he does have the ability to high point catches with a huge catch radius and really nice hops. We saw that in the national championship game. It looked like he jumped out of the stadium on one play. So he does have that ability to high point catches. He might just not outmuscle bigger corners. Like I'm thinking in my head, Patrick Peterson, aggressive corner, might be able to outmuscle him on those 50-50 balls. But I think that he is a receiver that has a ton of upside, but it might take him a year to get to it. That's the problem. But I still think you really can't pass on a guy like that, top 3 receiver in the draft. At 11, the Giants need a wide receiver badly and need a offensive playmaker badly, and he's going to produce early on.
Yeah, it's that word upside that you mentioned. That's why I'm not as high on Devonta Smith as I am on the other 2 wide receivers. Why I think that they should be, wide receiver 1 to me is Jalen Waddle. The upside is tremendous. Never seen a guy who moves the way that he moves and plays the way that he plays. He is a unique, different breed of wide receiver. Like when you go on Pro Football Focus, you read their draft guide, he doesn't even have a pro comparison. They can't even find one for him. And then you look at Jamar Chase instantly. I think instantly, as soon as he gets to the league, he's going to be a number 1 wide receiver. And I think Devonta Smith will be a number 1 wide receiver. But when I look at a guy who had most of his production come from screen passes and is also one of the oldest players on the field in every game that he plays, I don't see as much upside as I do with the younger guy who's been making plays through the route running and, going vertical downfield. That's my thing with Devonta Smith, the hidden production stats, right? Like how many yards came off of screens. That kind of concerns me a little bit. Not really. I just think that it inflates his stats and overrates him a little bit, right? Because people look at those statistics and they're like, oh my goodness, he broke every receiving record possible. Well, it's like, did he do it because he was being a great receiver? Did he do it because he was in a great scheme that was giving him the ball in perfect blocking situations and he was just running forward with nobody in front of him? That's kind of what was happening. Plus, he's way older than everybody. He's 22 years old. He was dominating 19-year-olds. Of course he was. He should, right? He would dominate me. I'm 19. He's like a grown man at this point. He's 22. So, but that's not to say, because I feel like now I'm sounding a little negative, I think Devonta Smith is an excellent wide receiver prospect. He's phenomenal, and I actually think that he is a little more physical than people give him credit for. I think he's actually a really solid run blocker, which is surprising. You look at his size and how skinny he is, and
He's got some of the best hands I've seen, man.
He's got excellent hands. He's a good route runner. He's a good run blocker. He's physical. He goes up there, high points them, those passes. He is a good wide receiver prospect. And if the Giants were to land him at number 11, I would be ecstatic. That's not to say that I would be, I would be more ecstatic with the other 2 guys, of course. But with Devonta Smith, I would still, it's a home run selection, like I said. And if the Giants have the opportunity to draft him, they're going to sprint to the podium with that draft card. And they're never going to look back because they're going to be getting Daniel Jones, his number 1 wide receiver for the next few years at the very least, or maybe even longer. And, that will change the Giants' offense, having a number 1 guy like Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and what I want to say about him fitting into the Giants' schemes, I actually think he'd be a perfect scheme fit, based simply on the fact that he is so good at creating separation early on in his routes that, if you target him, he has such a big radius, he can catch the ball in many different ways, and he doesn't drop it very often. He has very sure hands, reliable hands. If you're playing a West Coast style offense, which the Giants kind of do, very dink and dunk, they don't take many deep shots downfield, mainly because our offensive line was the worst pass blocking unit in the league last year. We had no choice but to go dink and dunk. I think, Devonta Smith is a perfect player to bring into this offense to really mask some of those offensive line deficiencies if they're going to be present, and they will be. I'm not expecting this unit to go from last to first anytime soon. Even average would be a huge upgrade. So I'm still expecting them to maybe take a step forward, but maybe be between like in the 20s, the mid 20s range instead of 32. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't think they're going to take a massive step forward, but Devonta Smith is a guy that, Daniel Jones can look to him as his first read and feel confident that he's going to catch the ball. Darius Slayton had a couple drops last year. He was injured a little bit. Sterling Shepard, they didn't really know how to use him. I don't think Jason Garrett used him properly until the end of the year. But again, Sterling Shepard facing off against CB1s is not ideal. You want him against CB2s. That's what makes him better. We saw it against Dallas. Dallas is a terrible secondary. Sterling Shepard ate them alive. So if you have Devonta Smith demanding CB1 coverage, and then you have Sterling Shepard on CB2s, you're going to be able to utilize your players way more efficiently, and then you have Darius Slayton beating CB3s on go routes. That's kind of what we're going for here. That's why Darius Slayton was so good in year one, because he was able to expose those, kind of CB2, CB3 corner, CB2, CB3 corners, and take advantage of that. But teams were just lining up CB1s on Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard, and there was nothing they could do. So that was kind of the big problem for me. I think Devonta Smith would make Sterling Shepard a better player. And Anthony, you talk about the trickle-down effect a lot. I think this is an opportunity for the Giants. They have to go out and get a receiver. And let's not even forget the fact they might actually go out and sign a guy like Corey Davis, or Curtis Samuel, and then, interchange Curtis Samuel and Sterling Shepard in the slot and on the outside. And then have Devonta Smith on the outside and in the Z spot. There's so many cool things that they can do with an offense with so many gadget-type players and, guys who are very good route runners. So that kind of entices me. There's so many really fun things to conjure up in your mind creatively that Jason Garrett can do with this offense. God forbid he doesn't ruin it with more, hitch plays and curls and, whatever we've seen with Evan Ingram the last year. But I don't know.
Like I've said before, getting a guy like Devonta Smith might finally allow Jason Garrett to open up the playbook, and it might fix a lot of those problems that we saw with his play calling. Now, is that true? I don't know. We'll see. I hope that's true. That's my prediction, right? The Giants will open up the playbook, because it's not like we haven't seen Jason Garrett, utilize a number one wide receiver to great benefits, right? Like we saw Des Bryant dominate back in, Dallas's heydays, right? The heydays where they couldn't make it past the second round of the playoffs, right? So we've seen that. We've seen Amari Cooper do an excellent job while Jason Garrett was still under the helm. So he knows what he's doing. He just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing right now. Maybe the COVID situation, he's settling into the Giants atmosphere. I don't know. There was a lot of moving factors, but hopefully he gets that number one wide receiver this offseason, and that's what changes him, gets him to bring this offense back to competency, and we can finally start thriving and see Daniel Jones break out in year 3.
Yep, that's the goal. That's at least the ultimate goal this season, just to get Daniel Jones into a position where he actually takes a step forward. We saw a lot of progress with Daniel Jones. It just didn't translate because they didn't have the players around him to maximize his growth, if that makes sense. The pocket awareness increased. His accuracy downfield is good. We know this. He can run the ball very efficiently. The problem is when your offensive line can't pass block for you, and your receivers can't get open, and your tight end, your best offensive weapon, is dropping the ball, and your running back got injured in week 2. Daniel Jones can't do it alone. There's no wide receivers that can do it alone. There's no quarterback that can do it alone. They need pieces. Russell Wilson's forcing his way out of Seattle right now, and he has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So keep that in mind when you talk about a quarterback who really hates his situation, because they won't upgrade the offensive line, and they won't include him in it. It's like, that's how important the offensive line is. I mean, Daniel Jones is not Russell Wilson. He is, a third-year player going into his third year who has an awful offensive line, 0 weapons around him, new coaching staff revolving constantly. Guys, like, how can we possibly expect any quarterback in this situation? It could be Trevor Lawrence, and he'd be better, but we'd still be disappointed because we wouldn't have seen the production that we thought he could produce because he doesn't have the guys around him. That's kind of the big thing. Maybe it would be better, but not exponentially better, where we're like, okay, this is the Trevor Lawrence we thought he'd be. But, this is why getting a guy like Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts is essential at 11. If they're going to trade back, you got to make sure you're getting Rashad Bateman or at least Terrace Marshall as somebody good. This is a thing that we've talked about before in terms of trading back. Right, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of trading back. I've made that abundantly clear in the recent weeks. But I want to speak on your point with the offensive line. Like, will Daniel Jones, here's the statistics I'll put out there, right? And this is going to lead right into the second round of our mock draft because we're going offensive line in round 2. So Daniel Jones, no pressure in his face. His Pro Football Focus grade, 91.5. It's an elite grade. Now when he's under pressure, 46.9. So overall, he had a 77.4 offensive grade this season, which is really good. That's a huge step up from where he was last year. He was in the low 60s. So huge jump. He played a lot better this year. I agree. The film agrees. When I look at the film, I see a much better quarterback. But I see a guy who really struggles under pressure. And I see a guy who's really good when there's no pressure around him. The Giants have to fix this. They have to get him in situations where he's not being hit every single play, right? The Giants' pass protection win rate, right? Their pass block win rate ranked the dead last in the NFL at 46%. You can't win games like this. The Giants have to fix the offensive line. They have to do it as soon as possible. And the run block win rate was 18th in the NFL at 70%. So that's much better than 32nd in the NFL, but it's still below average, right? It's still kind of below average. There's 32 teams in the NFL and we're 18th. Let's at least get above 16 and get to that, upper half of the NFL. So the Giants really need to fix this offensive line, and I do think that we found a guy who can really help them do that in the second round here, who should fall to the second round. Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State. I'm a huge fan of him. Especially when you talk about the run blocking. If you want to get the Giants run blocking even better, even though that's the strength of their offensive line, you're talking about Wyatt Davis. That dude is a mauler. He makes pancakes like he is IHOP. He goes out there and just kills defensive linemen. Huge defensive linemen. Big dudes. He's just throwing them into the ground like they're rag dolls.
That was a good joke, Anthony. Nice one.
I do that every now and then, right? Sometimes I'm a little funny.
That's usually my job, to make corny jokes.
Yeah. Hey, man. Got to share the love, right? So Wyatt Davis, though, he's a guy I could realistically see him going at the back end of the first round, but if he falls into the second round, like a lot of people are predicting that he will, could be a Will Hernandez situation if he's there for the Giants. Again, I'm sprinting to the podium with that card. When I watch his film, I am so impressed with the things that he does in the running game, and he's not bad in pass protection either by any means. He's always got room to improve. Every prospect does, but he's already, I think, ready to start in the NFL. I think instantly you plug him in and he starts playing, and he's a better run blocker and a better offensive lineman than whatever we have at left guard right now. Now, he is a right guard, and he's projected to be a right guard in the NFL, so you can kind of come up with this weird debate about what do we do with Kevin Zeitler? Do we move one of those guys to left guard? That's kind of the interesting debate. But personally, I would just go ahead, try him out at left guard, have him plug and play right there, develop him at left guard and see how it goes. But if it doesn't work out, next year, move him back over to right guard, then you cut Kevin Zeitler. That's my take on it, but I'm interested to hear yours.
That's a good take. And let's talk about, the scenario where the Giants do cut Kevin Zeitler and why this could be a perfect move. If you're going to supplement, obviously, you don't want to make decisions based around drafting specific players. Because you could easily miss out on the player that you want. That's the problem with saying, okay, we're going to cut Kevin Zeitler because we want Wyatt Davis. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to draft Wyatt Davis, try him out at left guard, like Anthony said, see how he holds, and if he doesn't perform well at left guard, move him back to right guard in year 2, and then cut Kevin Zeitler, extend him a second year. This is personally what I would do. I would extend Kevin Zeitler 1 more year or even 2 more years, lower his cap hit, and if you draft Wyatt Davis, move him to right guard next year, you can trade Kevin Zeitler to a team who needs a guard, at least get a 6th or 5th round pick, get some sort of value back. That's what I would do. Now, there is the argument that you can cut...
I'm a huge fan of that scenario. That's a really good idea, Alex. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that would give the Giants a lot of flexibility with their rookie that they bring in and with Kevin Zeitler down the road.
Exactly. So, you get some more cap relief to, throw towards a receiver or a pass rusher or whoever it might be, Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, and you get your guard for the future who actually might end up being your guy at left guard. He might end up being an absolute monster. He's a projected NFL-ready talent. This is not a guy who they're saying needs a year or 2 to develop. He can come in and be an NFL starting guard as soon as possible, and he's a big guy. The problem that I have with it, the only con that I see is that he doesn't really fit our scheme. That's the only thing that I think it's going to take him a year to actually learn our outside zone blocking with the pulling and trapping guards. He's a little bit heavier. He's not really that he's not a Shane Lemieux. He doesn't have that athleticism and speed. I think it's going to take him a season to adapt to the left guard position and an outside run zone blocking scheme. That's the only thing the only con that I can conjure. But again, he's NFL ready. I think he'll adapt quicker than you think. But that's the only con that I can make up right now.
That's kind of interesting because I slightly disagree. I'm going to say, maybe not on the pulling guard things. Maybe he's not going to be the strongest member of our team in that scenario, right? But I think that the Giants do run a lot of inside zone. There are outside zone moments, but I feel like those are kind of few and far between. I remember the first 2 weeks of the season when we were talking about Saquon Barkley, and every single rushing attempt, like we charted them out. He had one rushing attempt go outside left, he had one go outside right, and then the rest of them were like straight up the middle. Like
I think that's just because they didn't trust their tackles
guards. Yeah, and that's fair enough. Brand new tackles have never played for the team. They're settling in. That's fair. But I feel like the Giants offense is very inside zone heavy. They like to do those outside zones at certain times when they feel like they can get a big play out of them. I think that's really what it is. And when they do, it works because they do have athletic guards. But I feel like if they're going to stick with this inside zone primary, right? They're primarily inside zone. They mix in the outside zone. I do think that Wyatt Davis would be able to succeed in that offense. I think maybe he's not a perfect scheme fit, but I do think he can definitely be molded to fit into the scheme quite well. And I think, like you and I have both said, the talent is there for him to be a starter already. I believe that. So I think that, whether he's a perfect scheme fit or not, you can make him a scheme fit for sure. And I think that he would really succeed with the Giants.
Yeah, this is actually all just kind of flushing to me right now. I think Saquon Barkley is actually a better outside zone running back than an inside zone. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been saying that, when I did that film breakdown in the middle of the summer and I looked at every single rushing attempt from 2019, the number one thing that I said, because basically my thesis of that video was Saquon Barkley has not been allowed to hit his ceiling. Why is that? Like, what is preventing him from becoming the best running back in the NFL? And really the main reason that I saw, and this was in Pat Shurmur's offense, Pat Shurmur's offense was they were utilizing a straight down the middle run blocking scheme, just putting him up the middle all the time, not having him run outside. But when he did rush outside on those outside zone plays, he was really efficient. He was very effective. So the two main reasons I saw that Saquon Barkley wasn't succeeding, and then there was a third reason, but the two main reasons, bad offensive scheme and bad blocking. The blocking was atrocious, especially against the Jets in that 2019 season. Oh my goodness, I've never seen a worse blocked game by an NFL offensive line. And then the third reason was Saquon Barkley sometimes goes for those home runs and he doesn't see the field that well. That's been a problem for him since college, and it's going to probably continue to be a problem just because he's a home run hitter. But you can get away with that and having those negative plays if you have a consistent offensive line that's helping you chip away for four yards every single play, but he doesn't have that, and he also doesn't have the scheme benefiting him. He's definitely better on the outside zone scheme. I completely agree, Alex. So hopefully, going forward, the Giants can start playing to Saquon's strength and start running the offense through him the way that we expected them to when they drafted him with the second overall pick in 2018.
Right. So where I was going with that, thank you for confirming my assumption there with him being a better outside zone running back. But where I was going with that is, I think the Giants and Jason Garrett, Jason Garrett primarily runs an outside zone. What I think happened, and why I think this offensive line got so jumbled and mashed up in the early on in the season, after Saquon Barkley's injury, they had to change their entire offensive line mold, because now you have Wayne Gallman, who's an inside zone runner. He is not an outside. He does not have lateral quickness. He has vertical, strength and power. That's where he really accelerates. That's where he excels, because he can hit gaps hard and he churns out extra yards. So the Giants had to actually change, which is why we didn't see a lot of those outside zone runs. I think they were trying to establish that and get their tackles ready to actually do that. Like, the lack of preseason really hurt. But, then they have Wayne Gallman, who's the inside zone, so they had to change everything up. They had to go more inside zone. But I think when Saquon Barkley comes back, they're going to have to transition again back to outside zone more predominantly. Of course, I think they're going to have inside zone. But, it really comes down to the tackles, because they love to use Saquon on the draw plays too. Those halfback draws. And he was getting nailed on them by the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they had to play so much shotgun because their edge rushers were getting into the backfield so quickly. The Giants needed Daniel Jones to be able to see what was happening in front of him, so they had to do more halfback draws. It just didn't end up working out very well because their defense was so good early on in the season. But I think it's interesting. Wyatt Davis can come in here, back to him. He's our 43rd overall pick in this scenario. He can plug that left guard spot. A lot of people think that Will Hernandez and Shane Lemieux can get it done. At least Shane Lemieux. I don't think he's good enough of a pass blocker. I don't think he'll ever be to be our starting left guard. But that being said, he's a very decent run blocker, and he has the athleticism to be that trap and plug blocker and open up those running lanes. He's really good at getting to the second level because he's fast. He's a little bit smaller than Will Hernandez, who's more of a power blocker. But with that being said, Wyatt Davis represents a guy who's adequate in both. He's not just good in one or the other. Will Hernandez is really good in run blocking, is not very good in pass blocking. Shane Lemieux is good in run blocking, and he's not very good in pass blocking. I think that's why the Giants used Shane Lemieux more, because the running game was the only thing that was working for them, and he was a better run blocker for their specific scheme than Will Hernandez. That's why they kind of saw that. And they also wanted to see what they had in him, because he is the future. Will Hernandez's contract, his rookie deal, is coming to an end. So that's another factor to play into it. But Wyatt Davis, bring him in, let him compete for that left guard spot. If it doesn't work out, shift him back to right guard. Extend Kevin Zeitler anyway, lower that cap hit, and then trade him for draft capital. Worst case scenario. So I think that's a pretty good scenario for the Giants if they're thinking about getting an offensive lineman. Never a bad idea to upgrade the offensive line, no matter what round you're in. We know that's true because Daniel Jones has felt the brunt of a poor offensive line and pass blocking unit the past 2 seasons. But let's move on to the third round pick for us. This is the final pick in this mock draft. This is a player who has gotten a lot of draft buzz recently. He's been climbing the boards. He was a mid-round pick. Now he's kind of climbing in the 3rd round a little bit. This is a guy who really showed out at the Senior Bowl. He is a really, really, really talented corner who's really underrated, and I think he could be a perfect fit because the Giants kind of adapted to this zone system, just disguising zone coverages. Like you saw with Brian in the video, if you watch that, the Giants played a lot of disguise, and Logan Ryan's been teaching Darnay Holmes, and Jabril Peppers has been teaching Darnay Holmes how to disguise what he's doing in zone coverage and in man coverage to help the defense perform even better and more efficiently. So the next player that we have on the board from Syracuse, bear with me as I try to say this name, Efetu Melifonwu. Efitu Melifonwu. I don't know if anyone knows how to say his name. Please let me know. I don't want to mispronounce it, but it is a very difficult name. At 6'2" and 212 pounds, he has amazing measurables. He's long, he's rangy, he's athletic. He has all the tools you want in a very good cornerback. He's just coming from Syracuse, so it's not like he's coming from a massive, Alabama school that's pro-ready in those defenses. That's why he's kind of been, go flying under the radar a little bit. But he had such a fantastic Senior Bowl. He locked down wide receivers, and I think he's an aggressive guy. He's really, really quick, and he can really play this zone system that the Giants have adapted to. Traditionally, Patrick Graham has played a lot of man coverage in the past, but I think that the Giants did so well in zone this past year. Don't fix what's not broken. That's kind of the mentality that I have. You don't want to change the entire schematics up. If that unit went from being expected to be a below top 10, really a middling unit, if not a bottom 10 unit, to a top 10 defense in the league, don't mess with that. Stick with the zone. Disguise more coverages. Get a guy who can dominate in zone coverage. He's aggressive. He's a willing blocker, or he's a willing tackler in the run game. He's a very positive base guy. I think this is a fantastic pick if the Giants were to get him in the 3rd round. He's a starting level cornerback on the outside. Get him to compete with Sam Beal. Get him to compete with Julian Love. He's a guy I think that could earn that starting job within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I love Efetu Melifonwu. I mentioned him to you, Alex, a few weeks ago, brought him to your attention, and I found him, just doing some digging on the Draft Network, and then I started watching some of his film, and I'm like, you know what? This is a really talented kid. I like him. I think that he has a lot of traits. He almost reminds me of like the classic, let's say Seattle Seahawks cornerback. Tall, rangy, zone coverage base. That's really what he is. So, but I think that he could fit into this Giants scheme, as you mentioned, that has really gone more towards being a zone-based scheme. A lot of disguised zone coverage looks. I think that he really would be a great starting outside cornerback in the NFL. I think you could plug him into the Giants roster. He'll compete at cornerback too. The competition there is a little iffy. I think that he can easily win that if you're making this pick in the 3rd round. I think you're expecting him to probably beat out some of those guys that you have there at CB2, right? So I think that he definitely could. In terms of the scheme fit, that's interesting. Depends what the Giants are going to do, because we've talked about this, Alex. There's a chance that they maybe go back towards more man coverage once they find that CB2 who's good in man coverage, if that is what they're searching for. But maybe they find that CB2 that's really good in zone coverage, and they just stick with the zone coverage scheme. And Efetu Melifonwu fits that mold perfectly. That rare blend of size and speed that we talk about, he's got that. Maybe not to Caleb Farley's level, right? But he's still got like a huge frame. He's 6'2", 6'3" he's listed on some websites, and he's not slow by any means. He's definitely got some quickness. I like his route anticipation. I think he's got good ball skills, and I think that he's a really solid prospect that people are sleeping on. And out of Syracuse, people need to keep an eye on this guy because I think he might start rising up draft boards.
Exactly, and they're saying he could be a positionless type of player, which the Giants love. They love to draft guys who can transition to safety or transition, to a nickel guy if they needed him to be. This is what I really like about Melon Fonwu. He really has the ability. Let's say the Giants kept him for the next 7 years, and he gets to 30 years old, and like, okay, we're just transitioning you to safety now. Like that's the type of skill set he has. He's very athletic. You take shots in the mid rounds on guys with superior athleticism that already have a good fundamental basis down. That is really what makes me so enticed toward this Syracuse player. I think he can also play man coverage if they wanted him to. I think he'd be a phenomenal CB2 if they were to land him in the third round. Like Anthony said, he's climbing up draft boards. Keep an eye on him. He's a guy that I've recently kind of been turned on to, and he's really growing in my mind as a potential guy for the Giants if they were to have an option for him in the third round. But I like this pick. I think this mock draft specifically is a pretty good one. We landed Devonta Smith, we landed Wyatt Davis, and we landed Efetu Melifonwu in the first 3 rounds. That's a really good draft. You land your offensive weapon, you land your interior guard who could really end up being a starting guy. We talked about the Kevin Zeitler thing if they were to extend him and trade him. I think that's a really awesome scenario if the Giants were able to pull that off. And then you have your cornerback to compete opposite James Bradbury, and then you have your secondary established with McKinney, Jerbo Peppers, Logan Ryan, Darnay Holmes, James, and Melon Fonwu. That's you can't ask for much better than that. And then you have your interior line because you're able to, instead of going out and signing a CB2, now you're able to retain Leonard Williams. You're able to retain, Dalvin Tomlinson in this scenario because you're lowering Kevin Zeitler's cap hit as well by extending him. We're creating money. We're allowing them to really go out and find ways to retain some of their best players. That defense has top 10 written all over it if they manage to keep guys and even add a guy like Melon Fonwu to it. And then you have your offense, which, we're going to get a wide receiver most likely. You get Devonta Smith. You get Saquon back. I think we're looking pretty good. And then maybe you go in the 4th round and get a slot guy like Amari Rogers or, there's a bunch of players that could be alternatives just to develop in that area.
Yeah, what I love about this mock draft is it almost looks like we were drafting for need at every point, but we really weren't. These are guys who are probably going to be top 3 prospects still on the board in each of those rounds. They just happen to meet our needs, and it's perfect. Like one of our biggest needs defensively is CB2. You could argue the edge rusher is more important, right? So if we were drafting for need, maybe we would have went with an edge rusher in round 3. But I think Melifonwu was going to be the best player on the board at that point. So I think that he would be a home run selection, fill another big need on the defense. And then, of course, the interior of our offensive line is kind of a mess right now. The offensive line is just kind of a mess. We really got to get that solved before the season. As I mentioned, Daniel Jones is so much better when kept clean. So again, you feel a really nice need there with Wyatt Davis, and I think that he will be the best player on the board at that point. And if Devonta Smith falls to us, that's a home run selection. The Giants need an offensive playmaker. Dave Gettleman had his postseason press conference. He sat there. He said, "I promise we will find offensive playmakers. We will fix the offense." Well, that's the number one way to do it. You hope that wide receiver that you think is going to be a number 1 dominant wide receiver, you hope that he falls to you in the first round of the draft, and then you take him and you never look back. So I think this is a great 3-round mock draft. I love it personally. This is probably my favorite 3 prospect combo that we've come up with recently, other than the trade down ones, because you know me, I love trading down. Only thing that I might complain about is round 3. If somehow he's still on the board, of course I'm going to go Aleem McNeil. But Efetu Melifonwu, I love that guy as well. So I think he's also a really talented prospect.
Exactly. Aleem McNeil, I think the only way we're really going for Aleem is if Dalvin Tomlinson is they allow him to walk.
I really only mentioned Aleem McNeil because I had to keep the streak alive. We're like 12 videos in a row where we've mentioned Aleem McNeil, and we almost didn't mention him, and I was like, gotta mention Aleem.
Exactly. So, if they let Dalvin Tomlinson walk, Aleem is a fantastic prospect. The guy's already going in the 2nd round these days. We've really talked him up. People are listening. I've seen him knocked at 44, 1 pick after the Giants at 43. That's how high he's gaining steam. And he's really a phenomenal prospect.
Draft boards.
Yeah, really I'm excited to talk to him.
I'm excited to talk to him and ask him what he thinks about his recent rise in draft stock, because that's got to be an interesting thing. He was slept on for so long, and now all of a sudden everybody's joining the Aleem McNeil hype train, and he's really just shooting up draft boards. That's got to be really exciting for him. I'm excited just to talk with him and pick his brain about football and stuff and ask him. I have a great question for him. I'm not going to spoil it, but, I have a really good question I'm going to ask him about his running back days.
Okay. Well, he is an intriguing player as a nose tackle that can rush the A-gap and really put pressure on quarterbacks. Very unique player. You don't see very often. So that's really enticing. I'm excited to talk to him as well. But guys, let us know what you think of this mock draft in the comment section on YouTube. Much love for all the videos. you guys have been engaging on and liking. It really means a lot to us. The live stream went phenomenal. We're going to do it more soon, so you guys have some more live interactions with us and getting some cool mock drafts and any new information that comes up. We will obviously be on top of it. Tomorrow, Sunday, we will have a video coming out. Actually, this might come out on Saturday, but tomorrow we're going to have a video coming out. We might do the debate for Kyle Pitts and Devonta Smith. That would be an interesting one. The Nate Solder update probably is being shown yesterday. I think where this is going to come out Sunday. Nate Solder will come out on Saturday. Sorry, this might be getting a little confusing. My head's going crazy right now. But nonetheless, thank you guys so much for tuning into Fireside Giants and enjoying this 3-round mock draft with us. We're going to do plenty more of these, going over a ton more players. Jason Owe from Penn State, another player I'm really intrigued by. Really just kind of caught my attention yesterday, and we're going to be breaking him down too, so I'm excited for that. But guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Have an awesome weekend.